Dr. Ramani to give introductory remarks, and two speakers to deliver lectures on feminist jurisprudence by Professor V.S. Elizabeth and gender-based violence by Ranjini K. Murthy. And without wasting our time, we can start our sessions. I'm inviting my co-host, Priyadarshini, to introduce Ramani ma'am. Priyadarshini, are you there? I think Priyadarshini, she told me that she has some network issues. So
okay,
I think I can give an introduction.
Let me just, you have her profile, please do.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I have. Yeah.
Please do, not
okay.
delay.
Okay. Dr. T. Ramani Devi is one of the best obstetrician and gynecologist in Tiruchirappalli. She is specialized in prenatal care, normal vaginal delivery, painless delivery, cesarean section, postnatal care, obstetrics problems, and gynec problems. She is currently holding the position as the Vice President of Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecological Societies of India. She is practicing at Ramakrishna Medical Center, Tiruchirappalli. Dr. T. Ramani Devi believes that by attending workshops conducted by various institutions, she could enhance her understanding of a patient's mindset, which would eventually help her treat the patient better. So, I kindly request Ramani ma'am to start the session.
I just share one, right now, I just share one line. We have approached her on behalf of the students forum to sponsor for the prizes to be distributed for the 16 days of activism competitions. So she was kind enough to sponsor that. So thank you on behalf of your forum. Yes, Dr. Ramani, please.
And before I kindly request everyone to mute their audio and
okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Chaitanya, for the kind words spoken. I am very happy to address this forum on this particular day, very important day for women. That is International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. And I have been working with Dr. Manimehalai in various aspects regarding women empowerment, education, and menstrual hygiene, and so many other platforms. I am in a way connected with Dr. Manimehalai. And first of all, I congratulate her and the team of Bharatidasan University, University Grants Commission, AIWSSF, for holding such an important webinar on a very important topic, that too on the day which is dedicated to Day Against the International Day Against Violence Against Women. I am happy to say that I am the Vice President of Federation of Obstetric and Gynecological Society of India, where there are more than 39,000 doctors registered, over 260 societies spread across India. So 2 or 3 days back on last Sunday, we had entire program that was dedicated to violence against women, starting from morning 9 o'clock to it ended at 9 o'clock. And the chief guest for the evening was nobody other than Dr. Sumita, Minister Sumita Mahajan, who has been giving an excellent oration about how women should be protected. Apart from that, we had so many other leaders of the nation, women leaders, who had given some inputs regarding the violence against women. So as a representative of the obstetrician and gynecologist of Indian Forum, I am glad to be a part of this, and I would like to give my introductory remarks. And I also welcome, I am happy to share the platform with Professor V.S. Elizabeth, who is the Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu National Law University, Tiruchirappalli, and also the researcher and consultant gender development of Chennai. So now let me come to the intro remarks. That is, the incidence of violence against women is very high. It is in fact 1 in 3 among the women at any part of the life, say from the beginning of the life, or in fact I would say in utero of the life, up to the woman leaves the world, she is put under so much of violence. See, when we say our society cultural basic is basically the patriarchal aspect, where men are given very importance. Though we pray, we say that Sakti is the basic goddess whom we all worship, but is in the same country, we don't have enough of respect for the women. That is the sad truth, what we have to accept in this forum. So starting from in utero, whenever a girl, a lady who is pregnant is found to have a female child that has been picked up by the ultrasound, she will be compelled by the family members to kill that child, that is feticide, female feticide, which was very rampant some time back, but due to the strict government laws, we are able to reduce the incidence of female feticide, but still it is in practice. Then next come, this is all because the couple or the family thinks if they are going to have a female child, it is a burden to the family. They have to give some amount of education, but at the same time, they have to get her married and the expense that is needed. Also, they think only the male children in the family look after the parents or the elderly. But in fact, practically when we look into it, it is only the female children, the daughters look after the parents much more than the sons. So in India, the highest incidence of violence against women happens in important, that is up to 60%. It occurs in the state of Bihar. Then after that, we do come across this violence against women even in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, in the ratio of to the extent of 30 to 40%. So basically, what is the reason for the domestic violence? See, domestic violence is anyway the female is being affected either physically, sexually, psychologically, or emotionally. All those things comes under the domestic violence. It is not simply the physical violence the women face at home. And most often, it is the known persons in the family who are the root cause for this domestic violence. See, if you have a discussion with this couple or in the general population, it is a general attitude that it is the women can be harassed and beaten by the husband. That is an accepted norm, not only among the males, but even the females. They accept that beating by the husband is a norm rather than an exception. In many of the women are not aware that is also a sort of domestic violence which can cause, which can to which the men can be, for which the men can be punished. Beyond that, sexual violence is also on the very high incidence, and every day, almost every week, we can see some posters stating that a lady is being raped by so many men. So that is not an uncommon scenario in our country. So they are being raped either for under the effect of alcohol, or it is because of the some sort of like honor killing, or so many, that is the communal problems between that particular community and the higher community. So all those things are all playing a major role. So again, violence against women during pregnancy, that is really a concern for me, because I am a senior gynecologist and I come across so many of the women with pregnancy. They come to us, and when they come with some sort of injury, when I ask them, they will never agree that it was a injury secondary to beating by the known members of the family. That is because they don't want to complain about their husband, because that is going to have an adverse effect upon the family situation. So what is the impact of violence, domestic violence during pregnancy. See, what happens is the patient is affected. Patient can land up with sudden precipitate labor, premature labor. She can land up with the injuries causing rupture of the uterus, and she can have a baby which dies in utero. So it is not only the physical trauma she undergoes, but also the mental trauma that plays a major role. So now comes the law against the, I think our learned Vice Chancellor of Law University will be able to tell us about the laws that are in favor of the women. So even not only the education is not the only thing which can reduce this, because even in so-called advanced countries like USA, we do come across domestic violence. And to some extent, it is not only the women who are affected, but it can be vice versa. About 15 to 20% of the men, even in overseas, they are being violated, they undergo violence by their counterpart or the family members. That also we have to think, keep it in our mind. So then how we are going to able to, how will we will be able to overcome this particular problem? It is mainly by 3 E's, that is educate our women, empower our women, improve the economic situation. It is mainly the economic dependent of the women upon the husbands and the family is making them undergo all these sorts of violence. So if we can educate, empower, and economically make the women independent, I think we can to some extent win over this problem of domestic violence. So again, what the law says is it is trying to help us to prevent the violence, protect the women, and also punish the person who is being the cause for this. So again, suppose if the most of the women, they do not complain to the police. Recently, I was talking with the police official of Tamil Nadu, where he was telling not even 20 to 30% of the patient women who undergo domestic violence, they report to the police station. So one thing is they are afraid their family will split up, and even if they report, maybe they will be killed, and they don't have a proper place to take shelter once when they are sent away from the house. So the government of India has launched numerous centers like what we called as Sahi all over India, where these women can get shelter, where they can get the law, legal aid, as well as they can get the psychological help and support and counseling. So with this, I would like to conclude my introductory speech by saying that by educating, empowering, and making our women independent, economic independent, we can try to come over this domestic violence. Dr. Manimegale is being helpful in all these measures for making the lower socioeconomic group women to come up in all the ways, educating her, improving the economic status. I wish Dr. Manimegale a bright future towards this program, and I wish this program on domestic violence be a successful one. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity given.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. I think our second speaker is Elizabeth, ma'am, Professor Elizabeth. Ma'am, shall I start the first session? Manimekale, ma'am?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Professor Elizabeth is the current Vice Chancellor of Tamil Nadu National Law University. She has been a professor of history at the National Law School of India University, Bangalore, for 28 years. She has taught generations of law students and left an indelible mark on the institution. She has published several articles in various national and international journals. Her recent publications include Gender Violence and Law in Indian Society, in Gender Justice in the Church and Society, Violence Against Women Within the Family, a Human Rights Violation in Family Violence, Feminism and International Law in India. During her academic journey, she has held the positions as a member, Academic Council, Gujarat National Law University, from 2009 onwards, and member in the advisory board of Indian Law Review. And she's also a member uh, of IAWS. So I kindly request Elizabeth, ma'am, to speak about feminist jurisprudence. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Professor Mani Meghalai and others who are responsible for the invitation to be part of this program today and to share with you all my thoughts on feminist jurisprudence. I don't know how many of you are familiar with those two words, feminist jurisprudence. So I'll just quickly say a few words about that and then go on to what I want to essentially talk about, looking at the law from a feminist perspective.
Elizabeth, you can show your video. Students
no, I cannot because unfortunately, I cannot because I'm using my phone and it doesn't, yeah. My photos will be there on the TNNLE website if somebody wants to have a look at my face. So when we look at feminism, there are various theories of feminism, just as we have so many political theories like liberalism, Marxism, neocolonialism, etc., etc. You also have different feminist theories, and hopefully all of us are familiar with that. Now, the particular school of feminism that I identify with is radical feminism, because that is the only actual feminism, for the simple reason that it is not derived from some male political theory like liberal feminism or socialist feminism or Marxist feminism. As you can see, they're all just add-ons to political theories that men conceptualized, and explains again why all of them have not really fulfilled the hopes that women had when these feminist theories were propagated, from over 200 years ago. Radical feminism, on the other hand, which took birth in the 1970s, is inherently rooted in the experiences of women. So obviously it hasn't succeeded because the world over we live in patriarchal societies, and what radical feminism is arguing for is the uprooting of patriarchy. The reason it is radical is not is simply because the fact it says get to the roots of the problem and not just tamper with the surface, symptoms. So you don't deal like, COVID-19, you don't deal with, just the fever, just the cough, just the cold. You have to get to the virus, destroy the virus if you want to be able to end the pandemic. And the same thing applies to patriarchy and all the problems that patriarchy creates for women and men in society. You can't just tamper with the laws, tamper with, the political structure, or the people who are there in the judiciary. What you need to do is to uproot patriarchy, because patriarchy is deeply rooted in every single sphere of our lives, whether we like it or not. And it informs women about who they are, how they should behave, how long they should grow their hair, what kind of clothes they should wear, how they should walk, how they should talk, where they should sit, who they should marry, that they should marry, first of all, is also imposed upon them, and also includes what you should read, what you should not read, what you should study, where you can go, how you can go, with who you can go. All of this, we are informed at every stage in our lives, from the time that we are born, and very often even before we are conceived itself, already the process begins about how we ought to be treated as soon as we are born. And that explains the reason why, despite, so many of the clothes and the footwear and everything being so impractical and uncomfortable, most women, irrespective of their political ideology, end up wearing those kind of clothes and those kind of shoes. Stilettos are the most uncomfortable things to wear on the planet Earth. But you have women believe that that makes them feel good, and therefore they wear it. To, wearing plunging necklines and, sleeveless and a whole bunch of other things, which at another level they are told is immodest. And yet at one level they are told that that's what makes them beautiful. So if you get my trend of thought, all I'm saying is that patriarchy is deeply rooted in every single aspect of our lives. And as a consequence, we don't even know what we really want, who we really want to be. And that is where radical feminism comes, because it makes us look at ourselves and look at what is responsible for the way we are. And as a result of that, it enables us to actually identify the deep-rooted problems that result in where we are and what we are. So if you're looking at the law, radical feminism enables us to understand why we are also frustrated with the law and the legal system. Feminists have been engaging with the law for over 200 years, from the time women began in England, in the US, and different parts of Europe, to the women in India who in the early 20th century began to engage with the law, hoped that with legal equality, with political equality, all the problems of women will suddenly disappear. 200 years later, we are still talking about it. Clearly, therefore, liberal feminism has failed to deliver women from the clutches of patriarchy and the problems that patriarchy creates for women. What is jurisprudence? Jurisprudence is legal theory. It enables to understand why law, how law, what law, and what is it that law is supposed to do? What are the ends of law? Right? So it helps us to understand the sources of law. And what feminist jurisprudence does is to enable us to see the fact that laws as they exist, the legal system, which are all products of the state, which in turn is a product of the society, are all male in their perspective. In other words, Catherine MacKinnon says that the state and the law see women as men see them. So while our guest who delivered the inaugural address hoped that I would be addressing the laws that are in favor of women, I'm sorry to say that there are no laws in favor of women. We're made to imagine that they are in favor of women. But the very legal system as it exists, the concepts that are there in the law and in jurisprudence are completely against women. They don't look at anything from the perspective of women. We cannot ignore the fact that we live in a patriarchal society. And as a consequence, our gender roles, our gender behavior are informed by that patriarchy. And as a consequence, men and women almost live in two different worlds. That's the reason why people write all these funny books. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, etc. No, we are not. We're all from the planet Earth. But unfortunately, our lives almost run parallelly because our socialization is running parallel to each other. Boys and girls are not similarly socialized, and they grow up into men and women without probably not even knowing what's going on in each other's worlds, right? If you look at the kind of things that inform everything that we do in our lives today as young, middle-aged, and old women, this all comes from the way in which we have been brought up. And if you compare, take some notes, comparing them with our male siblings or with our male partners or male friends, you'll find that they never went through any of the things that you and I have gone through as we grew up from babyhood to childhood to, young adult to adolescence to young adulthood. And then, of course, for women like me, into, old age as well. We're completely different worlds we live in. And because of the fact that we live in patriarchy, not only do we live in different worlds, our experiences are different. No boy has to grow up worrying about being, felt up while walking down the road, or worry about somebody coming and singing some obscene song or making some obscene proposition to him as he walks to school or travels in a bus or, gets into school itself. Right? Now, of course, we do have male sexual abuse where there are male children who have been sexually abused. The fact is that male children are not brought up to worry about that, whereas female children are brought up to worry. They're always told that there is something that will happen. People may not explain what is that something that will happen, but girl children are brought up to fear that there is something that will happen if they don't come back from school in time, if they walk alone. And as a consequence of all, can I request people to kindly turn off your mics so that we don't keep getting these kind of disturbances?
Yes.
It disturbs my trend of thought. Unfortunately, I'm the kind of person who, once I'm distracted, then I forget what I was saying earlier.
Admin, please ask everyone to mute it. Sorry.
So I think I was talking about the fact that the experiences of males and females are very different in our society because we live in very different worlds. in the society, though we may live within the same household, in the same family, in the same community, yet our experiences are very different, and that informs our behavior. And when it is so different, how can the law made by men, interpreted by men, implemented by men, possibly encapsulate the experiences, the feelings, the expectations of women? And that explains why they don't, right? So, I mean, there isn't, all of us here are pretty much aware of the various forms of violence against women that is there in the private space, in the public space: sexual assault, domestic violence, trafficking in women and children, various kinds of sexual assault that we have by people who we know, by strangers, by persons in positions of power, like police, the military, hospital authorities, teachers. We have marital rape. We have gang rapes. We have custodial rape. We have rape in the context of communal and caste violence. We have rape during war. We have rape in the context of armed conflict and disturbed areas by the armed forces, as well as those in conflict with the state. We have domestic violence, which can be by one's spouse or partner to one's own siblings or one's father and other women who are in the household as well. Now, all of these forms of violence against women are rooted in the fact that they are women. It is just based on their gender. Simply because they are women, these things happen to them. Not because they were carrying a lot of money in their pocket, not because they're living in rich palatial houses, not because they have fancy cars or they're wearing a fancy watch or fancy jewelry. So none of these are the reasons why women are sexually assaulted and physically assaulted, emotionally abused, verbally abused, mentally abused. All of these things happen to them simply because they are female. And that is not something they have any control over. Biologically, we don't control, whether we are born as males or females. Socially, we are not even controlling whether we become men and women. Society dictates how we should dress, how we should walk, how we should talk, where we should go, what we should study. And yet, because of that, we're subjected to various forms of violence. And even if all of us have not experienced all forms of these violence, we live with the fear of this violence right from the time we are born till the day we die. Because even 70-year-old women have not been, immune to sexual assault and domestic violence, right? So when that kind of violence exists in society simply because one is a female, we need to look at why, despite all the laws which have been enacted for the last 200 years, there doesn't seem to be enough reporting. The person who gave us the inaugural address, she talked about a police officer who said not even 30% of the cases of domestic violence are reported. And I can tell you that in sexual assault, not even 20% of the cases of sexual assault are reported. And yet the male perspective of sexual assault and domestic violence is that women are lying, that there can be a false case. In fact, all the opposition to the sexual harassment law, as well as the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, are all based on this very deeply held beliefs by a majority of men that women lie about sexual assault, that women force false cases of sexual harassment upon the men who have committed it. And to the extent where the women begin to think that they have imagined all that happened to them because people turn around and tell them that that man, he couldn't have done it. He is such a good man. He is such a decent man. How do you make people believe when it is your own father, your grandfather, your uncle, your cousin, your brother, your best friend? How can that be possible, right? People won't believe when a woman says she's been sexually assaulted. They don't. That's the reason why sexual abuse in our country of children has been so huge, is because nobody ever believes any child. No, it couldn't have happened. No, don't say that. That'll ruin our family. All these kind of things, which results in women wondering if they're at all worthy of living. So if there are women who've been subjected to violence, who contemplate suicide or harm themselves, it comes from this lack of belief in society. And yet we keep on emphasizing upon the law and all that the law can do. And today I just want to take you through two of the concepts we have in law. Do let me know when it's time for me to stop, because I'm not timing myself. Just give me, 2 minutes notice and I'll wind up. So one of the concepts we have in law is what is called the reasonableness, the test of reasonableness. Now, this test of reasonableness is based on the idea of a reasonable man. First of all, as a woman, I'm sorry to say that I'm yet to find a reasonable man. In fact, the whole idea of male rationality itself is quite a funny, strange thing, because there is absolutely no rationality or logic to this male rationality. And yet that is the basis of evaluating whether something done to a woman, did happen or not. So I just want to cite from one case, so that people don't think I'm just saying things out of my own mind. You have Justice Sarkar in the Major Singh case, which was in 1966, reported in SCR 2286, where he observed that while referring to the intention and knowledge of the accused, you have to infer them from the circumstances of each case. Such an inference, one way or the other, can only be made if a reasonable man would, on the facts of the case, make it. The question in each case must, in my opinion, be, will a reasonable man think that the act was done with the intention of outraging the modesty of the woman, or with the knowledge that it was likely to do so? The test of the outrage of modesty must therefore be whether a reasonable man will think that the act of the offender was intended to, or was known to be, likely to outrage the modesty of the woman. This standard of reasonableness is completely gendered, because all it takes into consideration are male views, male perspectives, male experiences, which informs this very concept of reasonableness. An assumption here has been made that experiences of women are part of common sense knowledge, when they are not. Because like I said, we inhabit very different worlds growing up and in actually living on a day-to-day basis. The conduct of the survivor or victim, as well as the conduct of the perpetrator, are measured against nothing but male standards, which is all based on the stereotypes, which are then enforced by the judiciary in sexual harassment cases or domestic violence cases, in custody cases. So what is this reasonable man, and what will this reasonable man do? So you have, in the context of sexual assault, it hinges on just one word: consent. But no law has defined till now, no judicial pronouncement has defined till now, what is consent. Everything is simply based on how each judge will interpret that consent. And to prove to you, why I think this reasonable man is the most unreasonable human being that exists, is when a woman is sexually assaulted, you have many judicial decisions where where the question has been asked, did she scream? In other words, women in this audience, take note. If you're attacked by a man, the first thing to do is scream. Even if you're paralyzed by fear, you should scream, because you'll be asked in court, did you scream for help? I have been sexually harassed, and I know that every time something like that has happened to me, I have not been able to open my mouth and say something, excepting when I turned 50 and a man grabbed my breast. Then for the first time in my entire life, I was able to shout out a few abuses at that man. And I was like so joyful that I could actually speak. And yet the court expects this woman who has been sexually assaulted to yell out for help as a first thing, when throughout her socialization, she's been told, girls must be seen and not heard. Second thing they expect a woman who's sexually assaulted to do is to have been aggressive and fought back. Again, which reasonable man expects a girl or a woman who has been socialized into giving up her aggression, even if she was naturally aggressive, to cultivate the characteristics of being, tolerant, bearing whatever is she subjected to, because she's been told constantly by her parents, this is a girl's fate. You take another route and go to college. You travel by another bus and go to college. Be silent when somebody says something to you, because he can do something worse. Nobody will tell you what that worse is, but they'll tell you he can do something worse. And then when she's assaulted, she's supposed to fight back. How many girls are put through karate classes or made to play hockey or football, which are all games which will help develop aggression? And yet the court expects this reasonable man who is a judge and all those reasonable men who are there in the court expect this woman to fight back when she is assaulted. And if she hasn't done that, then they decide it was consensual. She even might say no. And yet the court will say a feeble no is a yes. In which language is no a yes? Why do we have a word like no? If no means yes, then one word would have been sufficient. Yet the moment a woman utters it, it becomes a yes. Who is that? What kind of logic explains that? And as a result of this, it doesn't matter what changes have been made in the law, right? Till 2002, till 2013, rape only meant penile penetration of the vagina. The women have been sexually assaulted in various ways, and all kinds of things have been put into women's vaginas, into their anuses, into their mouths. But none of that was considered as, sexual assault. Only if there was penile penetration of the vagina. And again, mind you, penetration, which is the reason why when babies, young girls whose vaginas have not yet fully developed so that penetration can happen, those cases could not be ruled as rape because there was no penetration, even though the baby might have bled profusely because of the attempt to penetrate. The young child might have actually died as a consequence of the bleeding that occurred due to that forced penetration when her body was not yet ready to receive that kind of a penis. And yet those cases were ruled as not rape. In fact, in one of the cases which made me a feminist legal theorist, it was they tried to then try and interpret it to mean outraging modesty. That's another word that you'll have to try and figure out what the heck it means, right? So in this case where it was a young baby who was sexually assaulted by this Major Singh, in that case, the judge was trying to find out whether we could apply modesty. And then, the defense said, babies don't have modesty. Because modesty is not something that one is born with. Modesty is something that one is taught. And they only taught to the girls and women. Men are never taught modesty, which explains why men will urinate, pulling out their most private part of the body in the most public place. Whereas, women, if you just show your shoulder, naked shoulder, you don't have modesty. And that, again, is important to keep in mind. This whole modesty issue, I'll come to it later. In this particular case, this was the state of Punjab versus Major Singh, 1967, and decided in the Supreme Court of India, where an infant baby girl was raped by insertion of finger. And in this particular case, like I said, the argument that they raised is that it isn't rape, first of all, because there was no penile penetration. And secondly, they argued it is not even outraging of modesty because the baby doesn't have modesty. So God alone knows what kind of trauma that baby has grown up with, because she is not even able to articulate. She's not going to be able to remember, but she's been through, this terrible experience, which has been traumatizing for the baby. And yet that man walked scot-free. So when you consider these kind of things, right, is when you realize the problem with this test of reasonableness, which is there in the law. So it doesn't matter what changes in the law have happened, because ultimately it's about interpretation. And keeping in mind that in the last 70 years, on a bench of the Supreme Court, where there are about 26 to 30 judges, there have only been about 8 to 9 women judges. How do you expect interpretation of the law based upon reasonableness from the point of view of a woman? Because as a woman, if I were to sit on a bench and a woman says she did not scream because she was paralyzed by fear, I would think she was very reasonable. Because if she were to scream and that would provoke the man into killing her or harming her, she thought that staying quiet was a better thing to do. I would think that she was a very reasonable woman. On the other hand, this test of reasonableness it results from a male perspective, results in looking at it as the woman having consented to that sexual assault. Another problem that we have with the law, and because of which you had that entire #MeToo campaign which occurred, is based on this whole idea of the due process of law. Article 21 of the Constitution of India says that no person shall be deprived of his life or liberty except according to the procedure established by law. This imposes a normative requirement on the procedure to be just, fair, and reasonable. Question again is, just, fair, and reasonable from whose viewpoint? And as a result of this due process in a liberal state's idea of how the law should function, what you have had is that the male standpoint has dominated our civil society. And this male standpoint is presented as the objective, neutral standard of the law. And it completely ignores the social power which informs every single social institution, be it the family, be it the court, be it the state, right? All these institutions are informed by power and the lack of power. That's the relationship. These are all power structured relationships where one sex is controlled by the other, namely the male controls the female. The liberal state is the greatest manifestation of this male dominance. And therefore, when you look at the law, it is male in character. It is structurally constructed along the male point of view. It does not account for a woman's experiences, which are not only different from that of a man, but are actually rooted in the oppression by men. Therefore, when the law and the judicial system argues for value neutrality and non-arbitrariness, it actually ignores these unequal sexual relationship of power that exists between man and woman in society, that women are sexually subordinated to men. So this whole thing about neutrality and objectivity makes male dominance invisible and legitimate at the same time, because it is presented as objective, it's presented as neutral, it is presented as unbiased, perspective. As a result, the rule of law, which is again, one of the things which are greatly prized, institutionalizes the power of men over women. And then these determine the standards like judicial review, judicial restraint, and the dichotomy between public and private law. This discourse of law, which is constructed on the differences between the genders, as opposed to the reality of subordination, ends up rationalizing, neutralizing, and covering up the inequities in power distribution between the male and female in society, even while it supposedly tries to deal with the oppressions like sexual harassment, domestic violence, etc. And that kind of should give us a clue as to why, despite the fact that only about 20% of the actual cases are reported, only 20% of that 20% ends up in conviction. So if you look at the National Crime Records Bureau's statistics, you'll find that only 20% of the cases of sexual assault and domestic violence end up, in conviction. And the problem again with something like that is it gives if 80% of the people have been acquitted, people then think that, these are all false cases. Not that the procedure and the evidentiary requirement of this male-dominated legal system does not facilitate a woman's ability to prove them. Because what you need to remember is that the law and the legal system, a very political system, and all our ideas of rights, etc., are constructed through the eyes and experiences of men. And where are men's rights violated? Not in the private space, not in the house, not in private relationships, but in the public. So all the rights which are protected are rights vis-a-vis the state, right? A policeman may be able to take away a man from his house and go away for questioning. The state might arrest a man for protesting. But he doesn't have to fear his wife beating him up, his daughter, killing him, or the fact that, a male child will not even be allowed to be born. Now, when you look at that, so one is in the conceptualization of what is a crime itself is informed by male experience and male perspective. Secondly, is the procedure and the evidence. If these things are happening in the private space, and you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that such a crime occurred, where are your witnesses? Where will you get the documentary evidence for, proving that you were sexually assaulted by your boyfriend? Or your boss, felt you up? Or that your teacher made these completely indecent comments to you? How do you prove it when it is just you against him? Because the law hasn't even conceptualized the place where such crimes take place, because men don't go through these experiences. They're perpetrators of such crimes, but they are not the survivors or victims of such crimes. And therefore, this does not come within the purview of the legal system in terms of, what should be the procedure to be followed when there are these crimes against women. What is the kind of evidence required in order to substantiate that such a crime has occurred? And the end result, therefore, is that unless a crime against a woman follows the copybook rule of, having happened in the public space with witnesses, 80% of these cases end in acquittal. Only 20% result in conviction. And even in these 20% cases is the entire need to conform to this idea of the modest female, right? Because one of the tests, again, a concept that we have in the law, is in relation to the witness, what is called the Sterling witness test. So if you fulfill that Sterling witness test, that is a witness of a high quality. Who's this? So Sterling witness test is about the witness being of high quality and caliber, whose version of events are unquestionable. You can believe her testimony. Now, this Sterling witness test requires the woman, according to the Bharwada Bhoginbai versus State of Gujarat case, which was decided in 1983 in Gujarat by the Gujarat High Court, where it says you don't need corroborating evidence other than available medical evidence if the prosecutor's testimony is otherwise believable. What is this otherwise believable testimony? It is based on this entire Madonna-whore dichotomy. Of course, this is taken from, this is the irony again of this whole, male reasonableness. Because Madonna is Mary, the mother of Jesus, who is referred to in Latin as Madonna, mother. And she is considered to be a virgin because the birth of Jesus was a virgin birth, not through sexual relationship with a man. And therefore she is, honored and she's worshipped by the Catholics, right? So that is a Madonna, somebody who is pure, somebody who is virgin. On the other hand is the whore. The whore is your prostitute, the woman who is sexually active, the woman who has multiple sexual partners. So the judiciary looks at women, puts women into these two categories. Either women should fit this Madonna category or they should fit the whore category. If they fit the Madonna category, that they're sterling witnesses whose testimony can be believed. If they don't fit that Madonna category, then they are whores. They are women who are immoral, women who are bad, and therefore they make bad witnesses. Now, in this particular case, this Bharwada Bhoginbai versus State of Gujarat case, the judges went on to say that you can believe an Indian woman because Indian women are unlikely to ever concoct a case of rape. On the other hand, Western women are desperate for male attention. They are vengeful, they are jealous, they're angry, they're neurotic. And as a consequence, they will make false complaints of rape. Now, the reason that this is a problematic concept in interpreting the law is because in women who are westernized, right? If a woman has been independent, free, because again, what is westernized and what is this sanskari woman? The westernized woman, I mean, for that, you just don't have to go very far. You have to just watch all the teleserials that you all watch in your respective regional languages. I have watched quite a few in Hindi, in Tamil and Malayalam, don't watch them anymore. But if you watch them, then you have the heroine and you have the bad woman there. Right? The heroine is a woman who is sanskari woman, the woman who follows the gender norms, who conforms to the cultural norms, who, is always wearing a sari, a very modest woman, who does not, use makeup, who wears all the right kind of jewelry, nothing which is modern. She doesn't cut her hair. She has long hair. She keeps the bindi. She wears her Mangal Sutra or her tali. And she's always crying because, the sanskari or the good woman's life is a misery. It is a nightmare because her husband doesn't love her. Her parents don't love her. Her children don't love her. Mother-in-law is cruel. Daughter-in-law is cruel. And the villain is always trying to rape her or to, seduce her. So she's always crying. On the other hand is the bad woman, the westernized woman. She'll have short hair. She will wear salwars. She will wear, skirts. She'll wear jeans. She will wear makeup and she'll have fancy bindis, fancy earrings. So, this dichotomy that exists in our teleserials, which is in our society's consciousness, which informs also the judiciary. And therefore, a woman who does not conform to this, Indian woman, traditional Indian woman, is immediately suspect. She is not believed. And as a consequence, the court can end up in acquitting the accused while convicting the accused in the case where the woman is conforming to the gender stereotypes that the judiciary expects, right? The Madonna kind of woman as opposed to the whore kind of woman. So while Boginbhai versus state of Gujarat, ended in conviction because the woman in question was an Indian woman who the court had decided will not tell lies, is not, seeking male attention, etc., and therefore will not foist a false complaint. On the other hand, in the more recent case, which was decided in 2017, not 2017, it was a little later on. It is the case called Mahmood Farooqi versus state, which is NCT of Delhi. In that particular case, the court, first of all, said a feeble no may mean yes. And secondly, because the prosecutrix, that is the woman survivor, was a student of Columbia University, was under the influence of alcohol at the time the incident took place, and she was aware of the accused having been married, she didn't fulfill the Sterling witness test, and therefore the court held that instances of woman behavior are not unknown, that a feeble no may mean a yes. If the parties are strangers, of course, the theory may not be applied. But if the parties are in some kind of prohibited relationship, it would be difficult to lay down a general principle. But if one of the parties to the act is a conservative person, even that you can't apply. But the same would not be the situation when parties are known to each other, are persons of letters, and are intellectually or academically proficient, and if in the past there have been physical contacts. In such cases, it would be really difficult to decipher whether a little or no resistance and a feeble no was actually a denial of consent. Do you get my point? You may have, therefore, laws which seem to be women-friendly. But the reason that women are frustrated with the law and that many women do not report the crimes that are committed against them, be it sexual harassment, sexual assault, or domestic violence, because they have no faith in the law. Because if there's 80% acquittal in cases where women have actually taken the courage to go and report, then where is the question of getting justice in a court of law, which is based upon concepts, ideas, perceptions, which are all completely male determined, right? So when I say feminist jurisprudence, what we're talking about is looking at the law, critiquing the law from the perspective of women's experience. Looking at the law through the eyes of women. Looking at the law through the experiences of women, understanding that the law as it exists is from a male perspective, that the law is not gender neutral, that sex equality in the law has not really been meaningfully defined for women, that it has been defined and limited from the male point of view to correspond with the existing social reality of sex inequality. Because in this approach, inequality is not of sameness and difference, but of dominance and subordination. Inequality is about power, its definition, and its maldistribution. Mainstream equality law is abstract, falsely universal. And as feminist legal theorists, we confront this law, the inequalities that it contains, and responsible for women's condition, and we take a completely different approach. What is this alternate approach? It centers on the most sex differential abuses of women as a gender, abuses that sex equality law in its sameness or difference obsession cannot confront. It is based on the reality that feminism, beginning with consciousness raising, has most distinctly uncovered a reality about which little systematic was known before 1970, namely the reality of sexual abuse. When you keep the reality of gender in view, it makes it impossible to see gender as a difference. Because unless you look at the subordinated condition of women as the difference, it really makes no sense. And it is this reality which has called for a new conception of the problem of sex inequality, and therefore why you have feminist jurisprudence. Because what you need is a new legal conception of the sex inequality, both doctrinally as well as jurisprudentially. And therefore the objective of feminist jurisprudence is to take this into consideration. And that's the reason why when you look at the feminist legal methods that are involved, it's asking the woman question, feminist practical reasoning, and consciousness raising. We're concerned with the law. We're also concerned with facts. But these have to be the facts rooted in women's experience and not as men perceive them, which is the reason why when we look at we try to satisfy the question of test of reasonableness or the test of the sterling witness, it has got to be based upon what is reasonable from a woman's point of view. Domestic violence, always the question is, why did she not leave him if he was subjecting her to so much violence? The reasonable woman's perspective would be, why does he beat her so much when they are in such an intimate relationship? The male rationality looks at it as, a few slaps, a few kicks, being kicked every day, being abused every day. If the woman is tolerating it, then that she's okay with it. Whereas feminist practical reasoning tells you the woman stays in that relationship because if she were to leave that relationship, society will condemn her. She will not have the support of her family. She worries about who will take care of the children. She worries about how will she survive, since most often women who are in domestic violence situations are also controlled financially and economically. So her feminist practical reasoning tells her that if she can endure this, then she should just endure it. And therefore she endures it till she can't. And that is when women resort to violence, which again, when you look at the law, the only exception that you have, or one of the exceptions you have to murder, is when it is done under sudden and grave provocation. And that is what a man does. Women do not act in sudden and grave provocation because women have been socialized into accepting a whole lot of violence that is perpetrated on them. So if you have not watched the movie Provoked, if you haven't read the case R versus Ahluwalia, you should, because that speaks of a young Punjabi sanskari woman who set her husband on fire when he was sleeping. That is a time period when a new concept from a feminist perspective was invented, as opposed to the sudden and grave provocation, came the new concept, the battered woman syndrome. To understand, like the Stockholm syndrome. Battered woman syndrome is another syndrome that where women have been subjected to continuous abuse, physical, emotional, mental, and otherwise, that the women believe that they are incapable of doing anything, cannot protect themselves, cannot take care of themselves. And therefore, it's only after years of abuse and only when their life or the life of a child is threatened that the women resort to violence. But you needed feminists to come up with that concept, just like the concept of sexual harassment. There was no such concept in the law. It was in the 1970s that Catherine MacKinnon coined that phrase, sexual harassment, to capture the experiences of women, which is not exactly sexual assault, but which nevertheless is sexual in character and rooted in the power differentiation between men and women in society as well as in the workplace. That is what is feminist jurisprudence. I will stop here because I think I have exceeded my time and I'd like to hear any questions or responses to my talk and take them.
Chaitanya, please.
Ma'am.
You invite questions.
Ma'am. Ma'am.
I have seen one question that has come in the chat box and which I just read. It's about marital rape. There is no such crime in this country, excepting in the context of the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, which does describe sexual assault in the context of marriage within the home as a form of violence and therefore provides relief to the woman against such sexual violence. Apart from that, it is not a criminal. It's not a crime, so it is not described in the criminal law. The Indian Penal Code, which describes offenses, does not contain it at all. But the fact of the matter is that any sexual relationship which happens without the express consent of a woman is rape. And a majority of women, whether Indian or outside India, in marriage, very rarely are asked whether they want to have sex. Very few men actually are considerate enough to ask, are you in the mood for sex tonight? Do you want to, have a relationship, right? It is just assumed that once you have consented to marriage, that you have given consent to sex throughout the length of that marriage. And as a result of which, you have women who are subjected to rape in marriage who do not report it because they have been taught by their mothers and grandmothers and by society in general that this is what men do and you just have to put up with it. You have to deal with it. There are doctors who have reported how there have been women who come to them with injuries around their vagina or other parts of the body because their husbands have been terribly violent during these relationships. So there is rape which happens in the context of marriage, but which is not yet criminalized. Yeah, if there are any other questions.
Is there any other questions? I think we can wait at least 5 more minutes. If you have any question, please unmute yourself and you can ask. Otherwise, you can put it in the chat box.
Professor Elizabeth, there is an observation from Ranjani, the other speaker. Did you notice that in the chat box? That is little above. Chaitanya, you can read it.
If you can read out the question, I will be able to think.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for your
Sorry, ma'am, I couldn't.
presentation. It was very. I'm asking my question.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. So I just, I really liked your presentation. I just wanted clarification on, because what you were talking about is from the women's perspective, from the point of power relations. But there is a particular strand of radical feminism, not all radical feminists, who believe that men are biologically prone to violence. So when you say that you are a radical feminist, do you uphold that kind of view? What exactly, if you could clarify, it would be nice.
Okay, first of all, I don't know which radical feminist believes that biologically men are violent. I don't think there is any radical feminist theory which says that men are inherently violent. I think what radical feminists do say is that the heterosexual relationship in a patriarchal society is inherently a male-dominated relationship. And I subscribe to that idea that in a society which is patriarchal, all relationship between men and women is power-based. There is no relationship that can ever be power neutral because men are dominant in a patriarchal society. It's a male-dominated society, and therefore everything that we see, experience, and deal with is all rooted in male power. And that explains why you do not have women in any decision-making body, or they are irrelevant in those decision-making bodies, be it the judiciary, be it the parliament, be it any kind of a cabinet, be it in a state legislature, panchayat, wherever. The number of women that are there in these decision-making bodies is irrelevant, right? Because live in a male-dominated society, it is just tokenism, where women might be seen with no effective power to do anything. So I subscribe to the notion that unless you end patriarchy, there is no question of women being liberated and being treated as human beings, as persons with rights, and their bodily integrity and their private space being protected. That's something that I strongly believe in. I definitely do not subscribe to the notion that men are inherently violent. I just don't think that any radical feminist theory proposes that kind of an idea, because this whole idea of violence, aggression, being peaceable, etc., is all a society constructed, feminine, masculine. No woman is completely feminine, no man is totally masculine. All of us have different traits depending upon, one, our inherent genes, two, our socialization, how we brought up, what kind of social context, what kind of parents and upbringing we have, what kind of education, what kind of exposure, what experiences we have. That makes us, either timid and meek or aggressive and bold. That decides whether we, walk with our feet strongly and our head in the air, or whether we walk with our eyes looking down at the ground and, looking vulnerable. These are all things that we are taught or things that we learn in the process of our upbringing. So there is nobody who is inherently violent, nobody who is inherently peaceful, nobody who is inherently maternal, and nobody who is inherently insensitive. These are all things that we acquire in the process of our socialization. So I don't think there'll be any radical, to my knowledge, I'm sorry, my knowledge may be limited. Radical feminism does not believe in these inherent characteristics or traits of human beings.
Yes, thank you, Professor Elizabeth. Chaitanya, you can propose vote of thanks to...
Ma'am, there is one more question in the chat box from Avilu Veronica, ma'am. Yeah, she would like to know your thoughts on age of content.
I'm presuming she meant age of consent.
I think so, yeah.
Age of consent will have to be when you're an adult. But yeah, this debate has come in the context of the POXO and the fact that young males and females who are in sexual relationship, that has been criminalized, and very often the young boys who are oftentimes prosecuted and put in juvenile delinquent homes and the observations who are in consensual relationship. So there is the whole movement by the partners in law and development daily base, which has been trying to argue for lowering this age of consent. But it is a problematic kind of thing, because one is our ability to understand the consequences of our action isn't fully developed till we're 18 or 21 years of age. So some people by 18, they have developed that capacity, whereas there are others who, of course, there are people who don't even develop that at any point in their lives. But normally speaking, the average human being, where 18 and 21 is about the age when they develop this ability to understand consequences of their action. That is the reason why we make this whole differentiation in the law between how we treat juvenile delinquents and how we treat, adult criminals. And therefore, when you're looking at consent, what a young girl, of 16 years even, who is, sexually aroused, capable of sexual relationship, what consent she gives an adult man is very different from what a woman of 21 or a woman of 25 will give. Because this 16-year-old girl is still a girl, she's a child. And therefore, while I do believe that the age of consent legally should be when one is a full-grown adult. At the same time, I think the law has to be a little more nuanced and take into consideration the fact that adolescent children are sexually active. Instead of all of us, pretending that somehow everybody in this country is, all of us are born through virgin births. It's important to understand that, we are a sexual people, and that there are children who are engaging in sex, which also explains a lot of children who are abandoned, put into orphanages. It's not because their parents are dead, very often because of the fact that the mother was in a relationship as a young girl, and the man abandoned her, she got pregnant, and the family may not have believed in abortion or got to know about the pregnancy too late to abort, and therefore she gave birth and the child has been put into an orphanage up for adoption. So if you stop pretending these things don't happen, and we take that into cognizance and talk to child psychiatrists and take their understanding of what is consent from the child's perspective, what is good in the context of that child, we can have a more nuanced law which deals with in consent relationships with other. But when it comes to consent between a child and an adult male, then clearly the young girl has to be a young woman. If she's not 18 or 21, there's no question of considering that to be consent at all.
I hope there is no other questions. Priyadarshini, are you there? Can you please propose vote of thanks?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. I could like to take this opportunity to place on a record our hearty thanks to AISSF for the perfect logistic support and guidance to all of us at this occasion. I also extend my thanks to Dr. Ramamani ma'am, Professor Elizabeth, and Rajni K. Murthy for their enormous cooperation in the
No, Priyadarshini, you only, sorry, Professor Elizabeth is leaving, so you are thanking only her. She has to join another meeting. Sorry, Ranjani is yet to speak.
And thanks to Elizabeth ma'am for this enormous cooperation in this organization of the event, ma'am. Thank you, Elizabeth ma'am. It was such a wonderful session, ma'am, with you.
Yeah, thanks. For the organization, you'll have to thank the AIWSSF. I didn't organize it. Thank you for your words. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Elizabeth, for being here. And I know that you have to join another meeting. So on behalf of the students, I also take this opportunity to thank you. And of course, very, very, very strong messages conveyed through this discussion or interaction on the issue of feminist jurisprudence. I think a perspective could have gone through all the participants. Let us see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mani Meghle. Thank you for having invited me for this program. Thank you.
Now, Chaitanya, please invite Madam Ranjani.
Priyadarshini, I think, yes, she has prepared that introduction. Priyadarshini, can you please?
Yeah, sure. I can. Now we can see about the Rajni K. Murthy. As a background in gender and development, she has 33 years of experience in evaluation, mainstreaming, research and training, looking at development on gender and development with a focus on the issues of agriculture, food security, poverty and reduction, health, disaster risk and reduction, and sustainable goal development. And she works with NGOs, UN organization, and national government. She is one of the pioneer of the concept of women's economic empowerment, and she combines global and regional reviews with the field research and evaluation in India, Bangladesh. Okay, now we can start with the section, ma'am. You can proceed with the section, ma'am.
I think somebody has to present her PPT also.
Yes, ma'am, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll share my screen.
Ms. Ranjani, please take over.
Yeah. Where is the screen? I can't see. Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Is that? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, right?
First slide, please. First slide.
Yeah.
As she goes to the first slide, I just, okay, here it is. I have a background in development studies, specializing in gender and development. Today I'm going to speak on prevention of gender-based violence against women and girls. Yeah. And I come from a socialist feminist background. And very quickly, I just want to explain what is the difference. Liberal feminists believe that equal opportunities will be enough. That is, putting in place legislations will be enough to address gender-based violence, for example. Radical feminists, a woman's perspective and power relations is required. But at the same time, there is a strand of radical feminists, Valerie Solaris, who believes that women need to live separately and have relationship with each other. So that, so radical feminism is believing in women's unequal position has to be challenged. And some of them believe that male biology is the problem, which is reflected. Those of you interested in articles, I will share about that. I'm sure Elizabeth doesn't come from that point of view. The third is Marxist feminism, which believes that capitalism is the underlying reason for violence against women. Yeah, in particular, say the working class women, subject to violence. That is another perspective, while socialist feminist perspective really thinks that it is a mixture of patriarchy, capitalism, casteism, and various things coming together. In Indian context, the Hindutva, whole communalism, all coming together in different ways to interlocking to lead to violence against women. Now, this was not, this is an impromptu sharing before I get on with the presentation. Can we go to the next slide? Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So I will be giving you a definition of what is gender-based violence, giving you some data on incidents. Some of it has already been covered by Dr. Ramani, so I'll build on that. And I will like to discuss causes and what are the strategies of government related to prevention. what are the strategies of NGOs related to prevention of violence against gender-based violence against women and girls and the way forward. Next, please. Yeah. Okay, so what is gender-based violence? It's not on slideshow, no? Is it visible? Can you put it on slideshow? Yeah, okay. Yeah, gender-based violence is violence that is directed against a person on the basis of gender, right? So this could be, that is not somebody snatching the handbag of a woman and hitting her. That may or may not be a gender-based violence, yeah, but it is based on the socially constructed power relations between men and women and different groups of women also, yeah. So gender-based violence against women and girls is much higher than gender-based violence against men and boys. I will differ that child sexual abuse, if it happens against boys also, it has very negative consequence. But the incidence of child sexual abuse, as we shall see, is much higher against girls than boys. In this presentation, the focus is on gender-based violence against women and trans women, which interlock with violence based on other identities like caste, class, disability, race, age, everything comes in. Such violence, gender-based violence, can be perpetuated by men or women. Now, gender is a socially constructed power relations where not only between men and women, but where gender matters. For example, it could be a mother asking her daughter, putting her up for coming back late, because their gender has a role to play. So this is a slightly more nuanced definition of gender relations. Next, please. Next. Next. Excuse me.
Kushma Kumar, please mute it.
No, the previous one, I haven't gone. Sex ratio, okay, forms of violence. So I think a lot of it has already been
just
talked
a
about.
minute. Can you accept the speaker? Can everyone please mute yourself?
అలాంటివి చెప్తారమ్మా అసైన్మెంట్ రాసుకుంటున్నావా పుస్తకాల మధ్యలో ఉన్నారు చూస్తానైతే.
It is Kushma Kumar. She is in conversation. She has to mute it.
Yeah, no, I muted her, ma'am. I muted her.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am, you can continue.
To say that there are violence is occurring through the life cycle of, right from birth and even before sex selection happens. There is son preference, child sexual abuse, girl child sexual abuse, early forced marriage, honor killing, harassment in public spaces, trafficking, like somebody said, and domestic violence, forced hysterectomy against girls with disability. So we see a picking up of elderly women by their sons. This is also not uncommon. So it is a cycle of violence, gender-based violence, which is there. Next. Next, please. So if you look at trends, sex ratio at birth, population sex ratio is not too bad. Excuse me, I haven't gone there. Hello? Sex ratio. Okay, population sex ratio has improved a little bit. Can we go back? Yeah, okay. See, this is the one in 2001 and this is in 2011. We can see a slight improvement, but it is not equal. Yeah, So this is a concern that even all over the world, the population sex ratio is equal, but not in our country. And we see the bias becomes even higher with regard to child sex ratio. In 2001, it was, slightly better, but even there it was not equal. And we are seeing now in 2011, it is reduced further. Sex ratio at birth, it's still unequal. Ideal sex ratio at birth is 954 or 953. There are more males who are born than females. But we are seeing that in India, there is the sex ratio at birth is skewed. It has improved a little bit, but is still highly skewed. So this is a huge problem which we have, that son preference is there. And this son preference is not just among men. Yeah, it is also among women. So this is what the NFH's data shows, that both men and women prefer sons. Yeah, and it is closely linked to dowry, linked to, patrilocal residence, that is the girl goes outside after marriage. All these things have a role to play in why the sex, why, and also in Hindus, there is this, men have to do the funeral rites, etc. Next. Next, please. Yeah. Girl child abuse. If we look at the data, if, it's less than, 1 minute. Okay. Among very highly vulnerable population, yeah, it is 4% to 66%. That is, this vulnerable population means I'm talking about street children, sex workers' children. This is a systematic desk review of around 50 published articles done by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So it's saying that girl child abuse is between 4% to 66%. And when they interviewed children who were less than, it is 15, sorry, above 15 and less than 15. Forgive me for this lapse. It's higher in less than 15 years. Above 15, it is 3 to 39. But at the same time, there is boy-child sexual abuse also, which is there. The exact data, I don't remember, but it is also prevalent, and we need to be sensitive that both exist. And this boy-child sexual abuse is by men, but occasionally also by women in positions of power. Yeah. Can you come down? Next one, please. Okay, reported rape, 87 rape cases daily. This is the National Crime Research Bureau, but this is only what is reported. So the incidence may be much higher, and the NCRB itself says there has been an increase in rape cases over the years. So whether it is due to reporting or whether it is due to greater incidence, we need a population survey. Yeah, next. Yeah, early marriage. By 15 years, 7% of girls are married off. By 18 years, 27% of the girls are married off. Yeah, and the comparative figure for boys by 18 years is only 6%. So there is a lot of early marriage is still happening, though this is the one indicator where we see an improvement over the years. Yeah, compared to say 2000, 2000, we can see an improvement. So this is an area where there is improvement, though it's very hard to say whether the sustainable development goal of eliminating all early marriages would be achieved. I don't think we are on track with regard to eliminating violence against women and girls. Next. Next, please.
This one or the next one?
Huh? It's not working?
This one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if we come to intimate partner violence, Dr. Ramani has already said it is 31% of ever married women 15 to 49 years. And there has been a slight decrease. It was 37% in 2005-06. But post-COVID, there is an increase. So we don't know what is the present situation. So the most common is physical violence, followed by emotional, and 7% is marital rape. Yeah. So this is the data from NFHS. So the next one, while she loads the next one, from my memory, intimate partner violence was highest. I'm not able to see. Yeah. Intimate partner violence is highest among Dalits. Yeah. Now, so that means, it is a mixture of why is that we need to think. It is because there is also the pressure of poverty, which is high among Dalits, and next is scheduled tribes. So there is a economic base to violence against women, which we need to think of. So it is, violence is higher in rural than urban area. Whether it is real or whether it is reported, we do not know. What has happened to the slide? Okay.
It's not coming.
Nothing is coming.
Chaitanya?
So,
I have issues. That's why. Can you?
No, earlier it was coming, so now it's not coming.
It was coming, ma'am. I think I lost my connection. That's why.
Okay.
I'm trying to share the screen, but Manimekli ma'am, can you please make me host, and I think I can share the screen then.
Okay, I can do it without the PPT. I can see from mine and speak.
I'm not doing, somebody else is doing, but I'm the co-host only.
No, ma'am. Okay. Now you are the host, so I can see that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Chaitanya, mute it. I'll go ahead without the PowerPoint. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Here in the rural areas, and the incidence of the intimate partner violence is highest in the lowest decile, that is, who are very poor. And it is higher in nuclear families. So we need to remember the political economy base which is there to domestic violence, and it is higher among Hindus when compared to Christians and Muslims. And Muslims is the least. Whether it is due to poor reporting or whether the incidence is less is something we have to remember. But I just thought I'll share, because all the time we are talking about Muslim women being backward, and we need a nuanced understanding where they are backward, where they are not. The causes of violence against women, one is, like Elizabeth said, the power relations and attitude towards women. Yeah. Social norms on how men should be. Like, even women think it is okay for men to beat up if this reason. Yeah. So that is also a problem. And, like alcoholism is kind of accepted, alcohol consumption. Oh, he has done hard work today and he has come back after manual labor. He can drink, and then there is a slight link between, not total, because those who do not consume alcohol also beat up their wives or sexually harass. I also want to say that there is this hierarchy. Patriarchy is subordination of women to men. Hierarchy is the multiple capitalism, patriarchy, casteism, everything coming together. Because that shapes the violence against women. This is causes of gender-based violence. For example, for a Dalit woman laborer to say no to upper caste employer, to any relationship, is very difficult. So it is a matter of caste and gender and class coming in. So these are the kind of things which we need to remember. The other is neoliberal development. Why I'm bringing it up is we see gender-based violence as occurring only because of patriarchy. It is also to do with the, the growing inequalities and, disappearance of commons, and people are left stranded, in particular, Dalits and Adivasis who depend on commons, etc. So the kind of development model also we need to think. We see inequalities outside, and then we come and we see high consumerism outside. We are not able to do, our wife demands this, that, and you hit her up. Yeah, so the reasons I'm saying are many. And COVID-19 has seen a lot of seclusion and constraints on livelihood. And this is a nice recipe for all the hierarchy to emerge and for violence to increase. Yeah. I just want to give you one statistics. 52% of women and 42% of men believe that a husband is justified in beating his wife in some circumstance. Food is not good. She comes back late. She talks back to the mother-in-law. If you look at NFHS, so you see that women are also internalized and men also. Then the construction of dominant masculinity, pressure on men to be breadwinner. He should not cry, should get sister married. So there are a lot of pressures and you take it out. So these kind of pressures and others I've already said. Now, prevention strategies, if you look at the government, it is, one is, of course, legislation is not to prevent, but you effectively implement legislation, it may prevent others from doing the same. This is a hypothesis because in reality, I don't see it much happening because you see Nirbhaya, after a long period, you got justice, but it has not prevented Asifa from happening. It has not prevented that, Dalit women in UP from getting raped and then her body not even being given to the family. So while legislation is there, it is not the best solution, which is also what Elizabeth was also talking about. The other which the government has done, which is increasing infrastructure, water, sanitation, so that women don't have to go long distance. Girls don't have to go, for the toilet, go to unsafe places. So that has been another strategy which the government has adopted. Another is organizing women into SHG and SHG apexes, which they call, PLF, Panchayat level federation. On paper, youth policy, there is sensitizing boys on gender. It's not implemented, but it is there. Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao to increase the sex ratio. Integrating safe city into smart city campaign, and trying to increase the speed of redress. But these strategies have by and large not been that effective. What has improved is water and sanitation situation, a bit better, slight improvement in sex ratio at birth, but justice system is still, as Elizabeth has already said, the kind of biases, and it is not just gender bias, it is also caste bias. It is also class bias, which is there. And I think we need to remember that it is, people sitting on top are not just men, they are upper caste men, they are privileged men. So I think that is something to keep in mind. And the, media, which portrays violence, how they portray masculinity, femininity, how the helps have to be docile, all the perpetuation of various hierarchies through the media is a great problem. And adolescent boy and men's group do not exist. And microfinance, MFI, NBFCs has come, neoliberal and SGs are collapsing. The spaces for women to come together are less now than compared to 10 years back, because this whole microfinance industry has come and leading to collapse of Mahalir Thittam and various government programs. So I would say that there is a violence of development which is happening. And unless and until we deal with that, situate our strategies within the violence of development, we're not going to be able to move forward. Now, NGO strategies have been a bit more nuanced. RUSEC, for example, does young couples, they work with them on equitable marriage. I also want to talk of Sahyog, which in 5 or 6 North Indian states have been working with fathers groups and adolescent boys group. The purpose is good father, caring husband, and caring brother, because it is not only parents who oppress who control their daughters, but also the brothers, elder brothers in particular. So they formed a system of working with these groups, federating them and creating an awareness. And then women and men-led informal justice systems, gender sensitization of service providers, and also creating a space for men to talk about their own problems, to deal with things like addiction, substance use, etc. Finally, there have also been audits, gender audits of violence in that village last year, and planning an action plan. I think this is worth visiting, where a community led, where men and women's group both come together to audit, and plan for the next year. So I think that is quite innovative. So what are the strengths of NGO strategies is there is evidence of reduction in physical, emotional, and sexual violence, reduction in some substance abuse, helping in housework, but NGO strategies are too limited. They are too limited, and the one which is very difficult to change. You can change many things, but what is most difficult is some attitude with regard to caste and religion. How do you feel about helping? Okay. Sharing housework? Okay. Will you allow your daughter to marry outside? No. Outside the caste or religion. So attitudes are more easy to change, but some are not. Sometimes the men want to take from the women and say, we will do everything, but we will take up the case. But instead of involving the women's group also there. So they kind of the benevolent attitude rather than a rights-based attitude. And things come, like what I want to say is things come up like a rape case comes, they mediate, they go to the police. If things don't work out, strike a solution of getting the boy and girl married, which is bad precedence, because it does not reduce or prevent violence. It is showing, okay, you do it and get married. So you rape the girl you like. So that is the kind of, so these are the things to watch out. How do you engage with men and women in a feminist manner? And with men and with women, you have to address their attitudes. For example, I was in Teni area, where a woman had become a Dalit woman had become a panchayat leader, had bought a fridge, and she told me that she is waiting for her daughter-in-law to come with enormous dowry. So this is where we need to hit. We cannot assume that women do not have patriarchal attitudes. We need to work with patriarchal attitudes, and not those who hold patriarchal attitudes hit at patriarchy and not hit only at men. Ways forward, I feel this is my last slide. We need something to better monitor media. Yeah, because they shape violence so much in society. The way of, harassing girls, legitimizing that, chasing all this. I think we need a better legislation, not just obscene portrayal, but breaking gender norms, perpetuating gender norms. We need an alternative women-led justice system. We need to influence government program with men and boys. The onus of preventing violence cannot rest only on women. We need both working together. I think we need better statistics. We don't have statistics beyond the binary. We do not have statistics on violence against transgender. We do not have statistics on sexual orientation and violence. We have something on disability coming, but on these very little. I think we need strict regulation of this microfinance institutions, which lead to a lot of breaking up of women's groups and violence within the family. We need a socialist feminist perspective, addressing the various hierarchies, and we need to concentrate on improving the lives of the most marginalized women from Dalits, Adivasi, lowest decide nomads, pastoralists, informal sector workers. So in short, we need to rethink development itself to prevent gender-based violence. The two are very much linked. With this, I would like to stop with a photo. This is a photo of a competition among men of making chapatis. Yeah. So we need to change we need to change from saying men and women to seeing persons. Yeah. So that is the huge challenge. As long as we believe in men, male, female, men, women, we need to move towards a more equitable kind of conditioning, and without caste and various things, hierarchies. That is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now,
yeah, you can now interaction. And after that, Miss Celine is there. She will also talk for a few minutes.
okay, ma'am. Now we can have a question and answer question. Those who have question can answer ask the question, or you can post the question in the chat box. Anyone have question?
You can also make observations, participants. Is there any questions?
Do you agree or disagree with the analysis?
Two important aspects have come from the presentation. One is of hierarchy. That is the terminology, I think, to signify the intersectionality. And the other one is development itself, development violence. So she has brought the microfinance and how it is disappearing. And Ranjani has done a lot of studies on that also, how the coercive treatment that the microfinance institutions were earlier doing, and now it has all gone to them, and the very objective of bringing the grassroots women together to voice out and lobby for is very much missing. So new forms of violence are also on the increase, that she has brought out those aspects also. And
I just want to say, there's a lot of migration from rural to urban areas. So the size in urban areas is increasing, with relatives and all coming over. There are huge implications for child sexual abuse, girls in particular, but also boys.
So, Chaitanya, there is, I mean, Celine, would you like to bring your points here, Celine?
Hi, Manimegalai and others.
Yes. Yeah, hi.
I think everybody heard what Elizabeth shared with us. And I think she was pretty kind of focused on the jurisprudence, though. And she spoke about her experiences from how the laws kind of try to find solutions and how very totally ineffective they are. She also mentioned about 20%, which was an excellent kind of presentation. I just like to share, being an activist in Vimochana for the last 40 years, and day in and day out receiving women who are going through violence, from personal violence within the house and to the violence at workplace and violence in public places, and the categories of violence. What she also spoke about, a lot about sexual violence. And though we do have NCHR and other data which says this is the percentage, if you're grounded and if you're working, you also know the reality. As she said, Elizabeth shared that no woman is going to talk about sexual violence, and emotional violence, which doesn't leave any scar. And if there is, for many activists like us, it is quite easy if there is a visible scar, where you can locate how deep is the scar, what needs to be done, and one can attend to it medically, emotionally, but if emotionally to a certain level. But if the scar is emotional and which is not visible in your any x-ray eyes, then it's extremely difficult. If you go into any of the places where people are disturbed mentally, women are, whether it is in Kepakam, whether it is in Nimhans in Bangalore, uh, it's all overflowing, the number of women who are admitted. And very interesting is, it's against this whole thing of the violence is there only in uneducated families, within in slums. It's ridiculous if you really work. And with now, with the changing times, and with the living in a city like whatever Silicon Valley, in this blessed Bangalore, and seeing more and more educated women, more economically earning women, what they're going through, it's really, really pathetic. You don't know. On one hand, we people who are working continuously are saying, like, I'm from Vimochana. Vimochana has been working from 1979 in Bangalore, and non-stop, when many organizations wounded up saying this personal problems is never ending. We will have to build a mass movement and we cannot attend to individuals. We are happy in Vimochana that we were only one organization who said no, we need to attend to this. And we are seeing the changes, the kind of massive change that the violence, the nature of violence is going through. We are saying we are working on it and we are trying to bring down, maybe we can give statistics, but in reality, the evolution of violence, like some 30 years, 35 years back, they all used to ask standard, what is it? Godrej Bureau. Then came some Vijay scooter at the time of marriage. And today it's any number of what is there in international market, directly linked to the woman when she has to get married or settle down. Every international product. If you all see the kind of changes is visible, you open a newspaper, go back 20 years, why even 25 years, the newspaper content ads would be totally very different. Very fancy things was jewelry or maybe pure silk sarees, what Reshmi Mysore. And today it's only gadgets. And the gadgets where you can really break your head with all kinds of unwanted thing. And long back when we told about don't use women in advertisement, cherry blossom shoes, this was 30 years back. Why should a woman come over there for a shoe polish for men? And like today, it's very much part of the culture. If you look at every field, the cine field, the media, where in we go back to late 30s, early 40s, this dumb cinema. There's no sound. Okay, where they were never even showing the woman's face. They were always covered with their gungats were there. One or two scenes you will see the woman. And today even half a meter of cloth is too much on a woman's body. So this changing trends where the male psyche has throughout been using women according to their selfish needs. At one time, it was enough if she was a reproducing machine to just produce the family tree, and especially the child, of course. Though the determination of the sex was so, yet even we have cases of who are scientists who are sitting in ISRO who come and beat up their wife because she gave birth to a female child. Such a kind of ridiculous society that we live in, where every woman experience what we are going through on street. Nothing is changed. We think that we have been fighting, we in Vimosa, and many of our groups like who have been working for the last 40 years, all India level, we have our own network. We think we have been working, and somewhere we are reached a point now to say, well, we are working against stopping or trying to end violence, pata nahi, but at least we are trying to work towards it after the UN thing, before the UN thing. It's only increasing. We read everything about Asifa, the children, to what amount. And our experience in Vimochana is legally, we only need a platform to ask and bring these things out. But definitely, 100% legally, we cannot stop any of these. It is only increasing tenfold, 100-fold, more on women. So if it is the same society that has been doing, reason the COVID kind of a thing, in the shelter study, we did a rapid survey. There's another myth that was broken was family. Chutti, it's a holiday. All of us can be together, father, mother, husband, wife, brother. It was ridiculous. Women were going through too much of sexual violence and too much of domestic violence because there were no transport. They had to live in the same phase. Okay, 1 month, okay, 2 months, okay, 3 months. They had to look at each other. Men use sex to take out their frustration. Okay, if you see in war fields, many of the issues that can come about even exchanging the political prisoners. But the women who were raped over there by the soldiers of all the countries, they think it is a war fatigue. Men are so kind of under tension, they need to release themselves. So when the patriarchy has this kind of a very strong notion about the male body and female body is there to be used, misused, abused, thrown out, these violences will continue because it's at the mindset of people. And the whole rapid study showed us so many things now during this COVID 4-5 months. The number of domestic violences increased. There were no transport. Women couldn't reach shelters. Hospitals looked after only the COVID people. Pregnant women had to go from one hospital to other hospital. All the cities, all these things were same. So when these things are increasing, I think there is a deeper understanding of us, and especially the young ones, the students, to constantly kind of debate, read, understand. So I think I'll stop Money with this, but I would like to go on to any other details. Maybe send you also some of our quotes of women that we are doing, which you can contact even Corinne, which she's planning now 6, 7, 8 quotes on the migrant workers, on children, on women, and on youth. So maybe, and on ecology and environment, and on the youth thing, maybe you can come in over there. And I would suggest that if you can work it out together, it will be a Zoom meeting webinar, which again, we had another migrant meeting in the afternoon. Somebody was saying every governments want us to stay at home and make noise and finish in Zoom and webinar, not to come out in streets. Maybe part of it is true also. Thank you, Mani. I'll stop here.